Breaking news coming into the WION newsroom. An update on the Dhaka cafe attack. The coordinator now, according to investigators, has been killed in an encounter, according to police. Investigators say Marzan was a coordinator of the Dhaka cafe attack last year. Dhaka's counter-terrorism unit has killed Nurul Islam Marzan, a key coordinator in the July cafe attack, which happened last year on July the 1st in a gunfight. Now, all of this happened in the early hours this morning. Islam is the chief of the counterterrorism group, and the transitional confirmed to WION that this just took place. The developing news coming into the WION newsroom. At this point, police have not been able to confirm the identity of another suspected militant who was also killed in the attack. Marzan was a member of the Neo-Jamaatul Mujahideen, and Bangladesh has been involved in the motivational training, allegedly, of many militants in the country. Now, a student of the Arabic department at Chittagong University, Marzan disappeared last January. Much more information to follow with regards to this story. Let's take a look now, see if we can get updates from our correspondent in Bangladesh, our bureau chief there, Saad Hamadi, standing by. Saad, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Certainly a breaking situation at this point. What do we know at the very moment?
Archie, Marzan was one of the three priorities for counter-terrorist unit, and he was considered to be one of the key organizers of the July cafe attack that took place in Dhaka, and one of the grisly attacks in which 20 civilians were killed, and there were 17 foreigners in there. Now, getting Marzan would be considered as a success for these terrorist forces from the interviews I've made so far with them, and they've said that Marzan was one of them in the priority list. The two others would be Syed Ziaul Haq, a former major from the Bangladesh Army, who is said to be the chief of Ansar al-Islam, which is an affiliate of the Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, and Mainul Musa, who is also a leader of Neo-Jamaatul Mujahideen in Bangladesh. And these members have been organizing much of the motivational training, as well as hiring and armed training of the terrorists and militants in the country. Also, to point out would be the fact that these elite youths who have disappeared over the past months and years, in the couple of years, most of these have been trained, recruited, and motivated by these three persons that are in mention. The other person was Tamim Chaudhry, a Canadian citizen of Bangladeshi origin, who the police took down last August.
Now, Saad, we also understand during that hostage situation, there was a lot of, it happened in the diplomatic part of Dhaka. We remember back on July 1st, that Friday night when all of this unfolded, many people there, sort of taken aback, taken completely by surprise. And it's certainly taken authorities more than 6 months now, a year since when he actually disappeared. At this point, what are we expecting? Could there be more militants that are seized in this operative attack?
Well, security analysts point out that the threat levels have gone up from the past because of the kind of diversity of profiles that we have noticed only in over a year's time. The kind of people with educated background from affluent backgrounds, and it's no longer confined to that rural, poverty-ridden paradigm of the militants. So right now, the diversity is so wide that it's difficult to actually apprehend what kind of threat Bangladesh is running into. But the coordinated efforts of the counter-terrorist unit must also be appreciated, because they have swooped in on these terrorist radicals since July and have arrested a number of them and killed almost 28 people who they have suspected as militants.
All right, Saad, we're going to come back to you in just a moment, but now let's go straight to Santanu Mukherjee, an expert about Bangladesh, giving us perspective on this story. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let's get your thoughts about this. It's taken authorities now almost more than 6 months. He's disappeared from the radar, this alleged terrorist, for more than since July, and he went off last January. At this point, how significant is this move by Dhaka's counterterrorism operatives? Shantanu, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'll repeat the question.
Yeah. Please repeat it. You are not quite audible.
Sure. Let me repeat the question to you. This breaking situation coming in for our viewers. What we would like to ask about you, you're an expert about Bangladesh. We know that this militant vanished from authorities' radar last January. So it's been about a year now. And this coordinated attack where 22 civilians, 5 attackers, and 2 police officers were killed. A death toll of 29 people last year in July with the Dhaka cafe attack. That happened July the 1st. The fact that the terrorist operatives in Dhaka were able to capture him now, how significant is this move, and could there be more militants that are out there possibly?
Well, I couldn't follow the news, so I'm not quite updated. But whatever I heard from you is a development and a positive elimination of a dreaded terrorist from the Neo JMB. As you know, Neo JMB had started flexing its muscles in the recent past. When the cafe attack took place on the 1st of July, there was not much trace of it on the surface. And followed after 4 days, the attack at the Eid congregation near Kishorganj, which also took a toll of some. But it must be creditable on part of the Bangladesh intelligence and security agencies that at regular intervals we see a trend of elimination of Neo JMB activists. End of December was most crucial when we saw in the Dakhin Khan area, terrorists were holed up. And it was an excellent professional operation carried out by the anti-terrorist squad in which a female suicide bomber blew herself up. And she was so desperate. What I'm trying to emphasize is the determination and the grit of Neo GMB that not only a female suicide bomber detonated herself, she risked the life of her young daughter who was rescued by the police and then sent to the hospital. She was also injured.
Right, right.
So the induction, regular induction of the women, the participation of women in the Neo GMB, that is one disturbing factor. That means the commitment is huge. Number two, you see an intellectual, a professor or a teacher of Arabic in Chittagong University. Chittagong University is very famous. It's a center of learning. And there, that means the intelligentsia is also being inspired, likely by the IS and other Islamic extremist forces, well indoctrinated. And if it is in the hand of a professor who was killed in there, then he must have had several disciples to pursue the terror attacks.
All right, we're going to come back to you in just a moment, Shantanu. We're going to get our correspondent from Bangladesh, Dhaka, back in. Let's get Saad back in to get perspective on the story. Saad, at this point, we do know the key coordinator of the attack, Nurul Islam Mirzan. He was captured, a huge move for them. Now, we also understand that he's been involved in training many militants, motivational training there. What exactly are we expecting to find out in the coming days with regard to this? What do we expect in the coming days?
Well, the Home Minister of Bangladesh has mentioned that Nurul Islam Mirzan, as well as Syed Ziaul Haq, a former major and chief of Ansar al-Islam, which I mentioned is an affiliate of the Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent, are within the radars of the police, and they are likely to be arrested and taken down in gunfights as and when the time appears. Mirzan is just an example or a reflection of what the Home Minister had said. But besides that point, there are at least 10 youths that the police know who have disappeared from their families and are likely to have been radicalized. And this definitely poses a risk of where they are and what they are planning. Having said that, the operations of the counter-terrorist units are happening on a regular basis. What's not clear, however, is these encounters which are being carried out, how effective they would be unless more information is gathered and evidence is gathered of the involvement or the level of involvement of these radical youths or even suspected terrorists like Mirzan. Had they been, if they were able to be captured, then perhaps more information would have been available. That is what a perception is from security analysts. But since they're killed in gunfights, it's also difficult to ascertain the level of threats there exist among youths who may not be within the radar of the security forces.
All right, so let's recap the story for our viewers just joining in to bring perspective of what exactly has happened this morning. Again, breaking news coming into the WION newsroom. Here's what we know at this hour. The key coordinator in the Dhaka cafe attacks has been killed, according to investigators, this after an encounter with police. Investigators say Nurul Islam Mirzan, a key coordinator of the cafe attack last July that killed nearly more than 20 people, about 29, including police officers, civilians, and the terrorists. This happened on July the 1st last year, a Friday night. Now, Dhaka's counterterrorism unit has killed Nurul Islam Mirzan. This all happened in the early hours of Thursday morning. Now, according to Monirul Islam, he is the chief of the Counterterrorism and Transitional Crime Unit. He confirmed this information to WION just a short while back. Police are still at this point trying to confirm the identity of another suspected militant who was also killed in that attack. Mirzan, we do know, was a member of the Neo Jamaatul Mujahideen, Bangladesh. He's been involved in the motivational training of hundreds of militants across the country of Bangladesh. He was a student with the Arabic department at the Chittagong University. Now, police believe he disappeared from their radar a year ago, last January, and then it took about 6 months when this attack happened in July. So let's get Saad back in real quick again to get his perspective. Saad, what is the mood like in Bangladesh? The fact that this news has come in this morning and the fact that this horrific terror incident happened, I understand it happened at the Holy Artisan Bakery last year, which is very popular among tourists. A lot of the embassies and diplomatic areas are there, so certainly a very mixed crowd there, not necessarily locals alone. What has the mood been like over the last 6 months with regards to terror and terrorism in Dhaka?
Archit, although the security forces are carrying out operations on a regular basis, there is an awkward silence within the country in terms of terror attacks, and the fear is there. My conversations with security analysts sort of reveals the fact that these terrorist elements that exist in the country may have gone on a hibernation, given that there has not been any major attack, or for that matter, any attack since July. But that also suggests that there could be bigger plots that are under the radar and which the police needs to very closely monitor and thwart. Now, that is something that would only be a matter of time to understand how successful the police has been. But from evaluating the last few months since July, there has not been any attacks, but the fear is still there.
And you mentioned there's not been any attacks since then, but are there any other, the fact that this is sort of a step in the right direction, certainly the key coordinator thwarted, but for the people and the international community perhaps watching in and seeing what took place last year, where 22 civilians were killed, 2 police officers and 5 of the attackers who died. It's about 29 people at the cafe there. Is there more training grounds there? Are there? That was one that was thwarted, but are there other groups possibly out there that the government needs to step in and to prevent? We know this key coordinator trained hundreds of militants. So are there other copycats out there, other people out there looking to perhaps continue what he started out to do? Any clarity on that at this point?
Well, typically when the security forces determine the kind of threats and the kind of people who they're suspecting, they set up a priority. So there are at least 2 more priority threats they have right now in mind. One is Saad Zia-ul-Haq, the other is Mainul Musa, who they're planning to capture at any time unless they run into a gunfight. But then again, there could be more youths which are under the radar and not known as of yet, which also indicates the fact that the affiliation of international terrorist outfits like the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent have gained some traction in the country. And there are youths from diverse backgrounds who are getting influenced by or inspired by these radical forces.
All right, Saad, thank you so much for all of your updates there with regards to this breaking story. With that note, we're going to take a quick short break and bring you much more news from around the world. Stay with us right here on WION.